when you're listening to people share stories about their mom that are deeply personal and they're fragile conversations, you really have to be paying attention. So here I am. It came to me in the middle of the night. Podcast title, boom, jumped up in the middle of the night. Should have listened to my mother.
Sylvia and Me.
Sylvia and Me.
Sylvia.
Hi, I'm Sylvia Beckerman, host of the podcast series Sylvia Me, conversations with extraordinary, inspiring women.
Hi, I'm Jackie Tantillo, and I'm the host of the podcast Should Have Listened to My Mother. And it's a pleasure to be with Sylvia on the podcast Sylvia and Me.
Jackie, thank you so much. This has been a whirlwind experience. And one of the great things about podcasting is the fact that we do get to not only exchange ideas, but introduce our audience, our viewership to other podcasters.
Yeah.
And it's, as I said, it's not just broadening or expanding our viewership, but it's introducing them to other ideas and other people who we believe are interesting. And as you said, I had the pleasure of being a guest on your podcast. And we talked about my mom. And so now I want to talk about you. I want to talk about Jackie. You have quite a background. You've been in the media field for, it said, over 40 years, which is kind of hard to believe. Behind the camera and voiceover coach. Why don't you tell where you started off?
Well, it was my second day at college. And I knew, for some reason, I wanted to do radio and TV. And just so happened that the college radio station was one floor up in my dorm. And it was, I never left, really. After I found it that second day that I was on campus, I was there all the time. So it really just, I was very nervous. Obviously, a friend was literally holding my hand while he coerced me to start speaking in front of a microphone. And that's really, and Rob Rosen, to this day, I love him. I don't know where he is, but I love him. And I've been doing it ever since. So I've been in front of the mic, behind the mic. I spent 20 years at WABC Radio in New York as the female voice of maybe 5 or 6 radio stations and the female production director. So it kind of goes with who I am. It's a big part of me. I teach voiceover lessons. I do voiceovers. So interviewing people is a different animal if you're speaking from someone as a talent, and it depends on the topic of the interview, but you really have to listen. Listening for any interview, listening is really important. But when you're listening to people share stories about their mom that are deeply personal and they're fragile conversations, you really have to be paying attention. So here I am. It came to me in the middle of the night. Podcast title, boom, jumped up in the middle of the night. Should have listened to my mother. Literally.
No, I get that. And you are the youngest of 7 children.
Yeah, I am. I'm the youngest of 7. There's 6 girls and 1 boy. So the biggest gift that my siblings gave me, and I probably didn't appreciate it as much, but I couldn't really get a word in edgewise. So I was a very good listener. So here I am listening after all these years to these stories and conversations. So we were always raised to be, our mom and dad, our parents were very much in love and wonderful role models. But my mom was insistent that we be part of the team. So whether it was cleaning the house or cooking dinner, doing laundry, it was all in. And fortunate for me and my siblings, were all still very, very close. Both of our parents have gone, but we are all very, very close. We talk a couple of times a day, and we're very lucky. I mean, I have 6 immediate friends that I can call up if I have any questions. So they are basically my teachers, my parents, and my siblings.
Well, that's great. And I know what it's like coming from a large family. I didn't come from 7. There were 5 of us, and I was the oldest of 5. You were the youngest. So you said this came to you in the middle of the night. podcast.
Mhm.
Your background is media. Uh, why about moms? I know you're the mother of two boys. I'm the mother of two boys. You're an empty nester. I've been an empty nester for a lot of years. So it kind of, even though both of us have worked, not having that responsibility of having to figure out what's for dinner, pick up the phone and order, where are they, and so on. It gives
Yeah.
us the freedom, which, as far as I'm concerned, we deserve, because we have raised our children and we've let them, flourish on their own. Why about moms? Why was that so important to you?
Well, it it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to do a show on, right? Because I wanted to do a podcast. And Linda, that's my mom, our mom, she was a huge figure in our life. She was spiritual, religious, she was optimistic, she was such a positive force. I mean, she was used to listen on the East Coast, Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, the power of positive thinking. I mean, we she was constantly guiding us and helping us because she knew life was full of challenges and we had to make decisions, and it wasn't always going to be easy. You didn't always get what you wanted. Um, but she always was looking to turn things around, because if you don't, then you can go down a path that's not so good. So, my gosh, when you have this figure in your life that's like a beaming sunshine, you fortunately for us, we were drawn to that. So she would be mortified if she were here, knowing that, that the topic is, should have listened to my mother, because it's way more than that. But I know that there are people that are maybe less fortunate or grew up in different backgrounds. And I knew that there was a message to share and to tell, and we all have our own stories. So my story, it's just one. Linda is just one story, all that I have, and I'm very fortunate. We grew up in a town with large families, predominantly Catholic Irish families. I'm Italian, but there are a few of us in town. But um, we all were, every kid blended and ran down the street and got into another house and hung out with that family, and we had dinners together, or just we always had everybody's mom accessible to us, and it was this rich childhood. We just knew when to come home for dinner, those days of freedom and carefree. Wasn't a concern in the world being a kid in our house. We were very lucky. We didn't live extravagantly, but we had an experience, because my family lived in Europe for a number of years, and the last 3 of the 7 children were born overseas, 1 in Gibraltar and 2 in Spain. My father was there on business. He was an engineer. So we had a European culture, a lifestyle that catered to late dinners. We sat down together every night. There were candles, there were flowers at the table. It was a full dinner. We all got up and cleaned the table, and then we sat down again, and my father would cut fruit, and there would be coffee served, and we would talk politics and whatever for hours. I mean, our friends were constantly calling up saying, "Can you guys come out and play?" We're like, "We're eating." It was 9 o'clock, and we'd just be sitting down to the table. So it it just one of those things. It just in the middle of the night. And I know there are so many women. This is the most important part. There's so many women, so many moms that work really, really hard, and they didn't have what I had growing up. Maybe they had more, but they did. And this is what I've learned over the 4.5 years of doing this show, is that regardless of your past, the influence your mom had on you, often I will hear she did the best she could with what she had. And it's startling, because some kids, some women, some sons, daughters had a really, really terrible upbringing, and they still can see the light. So it's that transition that draws me, or that switch in somebody that can turn around a bad situation and make it a good situation, or a good situation, make it better. All those things that make us who we are today.
But that is very important for anyone to be able to say, I did the best with what I had at that time. And if we can say that, and I've told that to so many people and also to my children, it's very important to be able to accept the fact that you may have had more, you may have had less, but whatever it was, you did the best you could with what you had at that time. And a lot of that isn't tangible. It's it's what you knew. It's what your depth of knowledge. It really a lot of times had nothing to do with money and items. It had to do with knowledge, which is so important to be able to get your hands around that. And
From firsthand experience, you overcame quite a lot. And you're in mom mode, so you don't even think about it, right? I mean, now in
that's
hindsight,
it.
you don't think about how hard baby birth delivery was,
Well,
or
I remember that. I'm sorry, but a friend of mine once said to me, "Oh, it's difficult, but you never remember the pain." And I called her up afterwards and
you
I
said,
said, "Honey, it's 30 some odd years. I can tell you exactly." But again, we
"Oh,
don't we
you're
don't
right."
we don't have a pamphlet, an info, a book that tells us, yeah, there are many, many books that want to tell you, but it's really from either their point of view or from a scientific point of view. And we have to take all that knowledge and take that and dissect it to where we are in our lives and be able to use that. So you've talked to so many women, but before we get into that, I want to talk about how you took your family life and melded that or learned from it in raising your two boys.
Well, again,
Uh-huh.
I had siblings that had children. My older siblings had some children of their own before me, and then I got to hang out with my nieces and nephews. Um, but it's the same philosophy. First of all, I had my parents as good role models, and I'm married to uh, Rick, my husband, who I love and adore more than anything. So I didn't get married till I was 36, and I
Uh,
had my second son a week after my 40th birthday. So, um,
Good for you.
but you just I know how precious my life and my experience was. So, of course, we wanted to instill the same ideas and principles and beliefs and feelings in our two boys. My husband travels a lot for work, so often it was, I was home with the boys, and we'd be talking overseas to my husband and to dad. Where are you? What are you doing? What's the time difference? But it I didn't know anything else but to try and replicate what my parents gave to me and my siblings for my boys. The basic principle for me is be a good person. You have to be true to yourself, believe in yourself, which is often really, really hard, and to be happy. And if you're not happy, that means that you need to change your environment, or change your attitude, or change the people you're all of those things. It just is so much a part of who I am because I was given those gifts.
And as you said, not everyone was given those gifts,
Oh boy.
but we we repeat ourselves a lot only because it's so important to make the point that whatever we have around us, whatever our upbringing was, we hopefully are able to take those good parts, because not everyone has had all good. There might have been some good, or there might have been, as I've heard you say, it doesn't necessarily have to be a mother figure. It could be not everyone had a mother. Some were raised by
Mm.
distant relatives or friends or so on and so forth. And it's very important to be able to parse that and move on and just meld a lot of things together and take the best parts.
It could be one teacher in your life.
That's
It could
right.
be one nanny or babysitter. It could be one uh, someone of because we're speaking about female role models, maternal grandmother, aunts and uncles. It could be anybody, someone you worked with, somebody who just appreciates you for who you are. I when I teach my classes, I'll meet people and it's a range of every age and gender and race and they'll come up to say, I don't have the great voice that is a typical voiceover person, that beautiful voice. And they may have some anxiety. And I said, you know what? Be yourself because everybody else is taken. It's a
You
famous,
got it.
you know, and they're like, but my voice, and I go, you create what you want to create. And if it's authentic, then it works. I've been told over the years, the decades, well, this voice is in now. So we don't, thank you, but we're not looking for that right now. Or, and it's just like you create your own path. If the direct path to a particular job or interest that you have and you don't get there that way, you just make your own. You circumvent and you come back in a different direction. You restart yourself. But fear, I think, and not trusting in yourself and that confidence, it it just can eat you up if you're not aware of it.
Very much so. And so many people aren't aware of it. And I think that's one of the things that both of us are able to do in different ways in a podcast. Who would have thought years ago? I remember reading about Lucille Ball actually did one of the first podcasts without it really being a podcast. She had a radio show where
I
she
didn't know
just
that.
talked to whether it be Vivian Vance or somebody else she knew, and it would be on for 10, 15 minutes. And then the next day they'd do the rest of the conversation. And it's just a question of getting people to open up, to be able to use their voice, to realize they have a voice. And that's what is so great about doing this because it's fluid. I know that you work the same way I do. And that's not, if you want to ask me what questions I'm going to ask you, I'm going to have to say, beats the heck out of me.
Yeah, I have the same
Because,
problem. I
right.
don't want to know.
Right, because if it's not a fluid conversation, then then you're interviewing someone. You're not having a conversation and learning. There's not the back and forth. And so what I'd like right now is who was the first one that you interviewed?
Oh, I
Or
interviewed
had a conversation. Sorry, I changed my
conversation.
wording, had a conversation with.
I was working at WABC radio in New York, and Joan Hamburg is a phenomenal broadcaster. She was one of the first female broadcasters in the city, and she covered uh, goings on about town, theater, restaurants, social events, anything. She primarily, I think, stayed away from politics, but she was a New Yorker through and through. And if you ever wanted to get anything out there, you went to Joan Hamburg. And she was working at ABC with me. And I was like, well, this would be fantastic. So it was brilliant because you've heard Joan Hamburg talking to all these celebrities and politicians, but they didn't talk politics. She would talk about, people about town, right? But I never heard many stories of her own personal life and her childhood. And those were the stories that she shared with me, and stories of her daughter traveling overseas. So I got to see a different side of Joan Hamburg. And the first interview then was split with Christopher Nomura, who's a soloist, an opera singer. And his mom was born, his family, he's Japanese American, his family came to the United States. and he had starred in Allegiance, which is the story of Japanese internment camps in America. So that was a pretty amazing way to kick off my podcast.
I would think
Um,
so.
and it's just grown. But I also, it's important for me to state that you don't have to be a celebrity or someone on the social ladder to have an important story to share. And I know you know that as well.
I certainly do. So tell me now about one of the I don't want to say interesting, but one that really made you go, wow. And it was, it was more fun. We know that there are many, many stories that are tough stories,
Mm.
but the way things are going right now, let's hear about one that you were surprised about and was a lot of fun.
Well, again, there are many, as you know. There's a
I'm
lot of great
sure.
stories. Greg Lefebvre, his mom was a pilot. She
Oh,
actually was training pilots during World War II because they finally were accepting women to help out in the military. And she was training pilots to be pilots to then go overseas, but they weren't allowing, I think, they weren't allowing females to be pilots in Germany and throughout World War II. So she would then, after she retired from the military, and I hope I'm getting this all right, but she would call Greg up and say, "Hey, you want to do lunch?" And she'd come and pick him up in the airplane. And they would just fly somewhere and go out to lunch and then like, "Oh, I can't go, I'm studying for class or whatever." But, I mean, that's one that just comes to mind. Um, wow, so many. I mean, the stories I've spoken to people in Ukraine, whether they're there um, trying to get aid from the U.S. right when it had started. I guess it was February of 22,
Yeah.
um, or they're he was living I've forgotten his name and I apologize, but he was living in a newly renovated building, so he didn't have to go down to a bomb shelter. He said it's perfectly fine, and you could hear like the sirens going off in the background. And he had done a bunch of social media work, and he was trying to get the story of the Ukrainians out. But here he was talking to me in his apartment when all that chaos is going on, telling me about how his mother was just fantastic. And then there's the Ukrainian who moved to Czechoslovakia, or they moved here because they didn't like the experience that they had gone through when they were children. The mom couldn't give them everything they wanted, or the men and women have told stories about being adopted, and do they go and meet their biological mom, but their adoptive mom is their real mom. I mean, gosh, I wish you had given me a warning. I could have given you a
But
full-on
but
list.
we don't need a long list because
Yeah.
you've given, clips of
Glimpses
the
of reality. It's the
right.
mom going to all the daughter's softball games, when she was an adult, the daughter's an adult, she's still playing baseball, and there was mom screaming and yelling.
I think it's great. And as you said, it's not just you do not just have women. You've talked to men and how their moms have affected them.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to ask my children, but tell me about someone who it wasn't their mom, it wasn't a relative, it was somebody else special in their lives.
Definitely teachers have come up a lot.
That's
Teachers and
fantastic.
grandma. And I was walking somewhere recently, and I heard another couple, I think it was two gentlemen, actually mentioning that, because wherever I go, my little antennas are up. You can't imagine how crazy I am about it, but I have my card ready to, if you ever want to talk about your mom, um, talking about a teacher that influenced their life. And this is for real, that I heard this conversation about how she just was patient with that person. And she's had them try and read one page again that the student had been struggling with. And that was the beginning of opening the door for that one kid, is that one teacher just gave him the presence of mind to breathe a little bit and to stick with it, because you can do it. And now they're like a journalist or something. I think they were talking about, because now they're writers, and it was because of their teacher. Grandmothers they're
Oh,
just
yes.
wonderful. Yeah. So I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky.
What do your boys think about what you're doing?
Well, I think they're very impressed that I got nominated for the People's Choice Podcast Award. That was wonderful. They think it's great. I know they love me, and I know they love me. They love me a lot, which is great. And they love what both my husband and I have given them as far as family and love, and they will always have the cousins and things like that. They will always have that. Um, they think I'm crazy, but they love it.
Oh, crazy's
I'm
good.
doing it,
Hey,
I'm doing
listen,
it, and I'm having fun. So they support me 100%.
cool. So, what do you like to do when you're not talking to people for the podcast?
Let's see. When I'm not talking to people, interviewing people, I'm usually researching, looking for future guests. When I'm not doing that, I have music on and I dance. I dance a lot. I listen to other podcasts. I love to be informed about the news, so that's important to me. But I cook. I keep telling myself I'm going to start doing some sort of art, some painting or something. I walk a lot. I get a lot of exercise, go to exercise classes. I read. What else?
What's your favorite topic to read?
Well, nonfiction, because I'm usually looking for guests. So I read
Okay.
philosophy and sociology, and I mean, I try and do yoga and meditation. So I'm constantly reaching toward that Eastern philosophy topic or genre. I love reading novels. I don't get much chance to do it, but I love reading novels. I just get into bed at night, and I have the best sleep when I just can pick up a good book. Actually, my good friend just gave me 2 novels. So I said, I don't know when I'll get them back to you, but I will read them.
That's great. I mean, we have to take time to ourselves. That is one of the most important aspects of being a parent, being a human being, being a woman, is taking time for yourself, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour. But we need to find that time. And it's great to be able to take yourself out of what you're doing every single day and just, kind of immerse yourself into something else, whether it's a book or yoga or meditation. And that is, to me, a very, very important part of survival, of living.
It is. And even it's like the Times did it's like 5-minute yoga, waking up your spine. And I ripped the full page ad out. And of course, I took pictures of it and I sent it to my sisters. But then there's the video online. I love supporting journalists and newspapers and things. But um, it really can just be 5 minutes. And I'm often like, oh, I got to do this first, or I got to do that first. And, and then the end of the day, and I'm completely frustrated because I haven't gotten out to do as much as I wanted to do. But it makes you a better person. My husband always tells me, he flies a lot, as I said. So he says, put your oxygen mask on first and then help the person next to you. And I get upset with him and frustrated because I always think I'm fine and I can do everything, as a mom does. But it's really important, because if I'm not functioning at 100%, then it's true. I'm not giving my best. I'm not giving my best should my one of my boys walk in the room or someone else come to me for another question. So it's really true. You have to take care of yourself. Even if it is 5 minutes a day, even if it's, 20 minutes, my gosh, go to the nail salon and get everything nails done, manicure, pedicure. It's important because you're more efficient and you're happier. And I think that's really important part of being grounded.
I totally agree. As you know, Jackie, it's been wonderful having you. I'm so glad we could do this and we could swap, because that's really what life is all about.
Yeah.
Telling stories and being able to give voices to so many people who don't realize they have a voice, and being able to expand who we can reach.
Yeah.
So I thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
taking the time to do this. This has been wonderful.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
something
before
great.
we go, where can people find out more about you?
Okay. Jackie Tantillo. If you Google me, you'll find me. If you Google or search for Should Have Listened to My Mother podcast, you will find that too, wherever you listen.
Jackie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sylvia. It's been a pleasure.
You can find us on all of your popular podcast platforms, and of course our website, sylviame.com. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay tuned.